This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
It's time to make sports betting in Minnesota legal. It's a win-win-win. A win for consumers, a win for youth sports, a win for charities. Consumers would have more protection against offshore unregulated websites. Revenue would stay in Minnesota and be invested in youth sports and provide a tax cut for charities. Legalizing sports betting has bipartisan support, as well as support from Minnesota's tribes and horse tracks. Let your legislators know the time for waiting is over, and join 39 other states in protecting consumers, ensuring age verification, and benefiting Minnesota. Visit sportsbettingalliance.org to learn more, prepared and paid for by the Sports Betting Alliance.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Wasabi Technologies is purpose-built to free businesses from skyrocketing storage costs and unpredictable egress fees from those old and top-heavy legacy providers. You know, the big guys. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. From Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals, Wasabi is driving innovation in data storage, all for up to 80% less than those other guys. Try them out for free at wasabi.com.
With the homies coming to you live before and after could be the final game of the Western Conference Finals tonight. Thanks to Youngsteads, it's Max and Parker. They'll get you ready for each game at the pregame party. Don't forget to tune in after the game tonight. They'll take your calls, your talkbacks, whatever it is. Break down all the action with Wolves Fan Line. Listen as always right here on the Fan or the free iHeartRadio app, and you can watch it at KFAN.com/watch.
Lots of texts pouring in, some of them Wolves-related, some of them done as a society-related. Solon Blaine, I think this could be Randall's last game as a Timberwolf, especially with his replacement already in-house in Shannon Jr., who I would consider starting. No one is expecting much tonight from us. Get the 5 guys that give you the most juice and effort, and my gosh, Gobert, give us a 15 to 20 rebound, 3 to 5 blocks kind of game. It is funny when you look back on it. What were his totals in the clinching game against the Lakers? 27. Does he have 27 points and 24 rebounds the rest of the playoffs?
That's a great question.
Because
it's probably closer than we'd like to admit.
And you say, how did that happen? 27. It was Wilt. 27 and 24.
J.J. Redick is how that happened.
I think you're right.
J.J. Redick's stubbornness is how that happened.
Ed in St. Paul. The ball gets sticky. Randall's game is icky. If only we had Ricky. Wolves 7.
I
wonder if Rubio is paying attention.
I wasn't ready for Ricky.
You think Rubio is? I'm assuming he's back in Spain.
Yeah, I would think so.
So I wonder.
Johnny would know.
Yeah, remind me to ask him that when we have him on at 4:30.
Nobody wants to talk, man. For the rest of Rubio's life, unfortunately. I'll just think about Kevin Garnett's impression of him.
Oh, that was so good. That was just
nobody wants to talk, man.
So outstanding.
And no, for the multiple people that have tweeted and texted me, I'm not considering enrolling myself in the San Francisco Public School District to try to get a college degree.
Wow. Now, are you just anticipating that cheap shot, or have you actually already heard it or read it?
My good friend and yours, Josh Broughton.
Oh, he's already done it?
He just texted me straight up. Are you considering re-enrolling in school in San Francisco? Imagine how many degrees you could procure.
612 writes, I teach in Minneapolis public schools at a high school, and we already have some of these pieces in place. 26% is a D-, and we allow students 2 weeks after the quarter to retake tests and get their grades up. My son graduated from the same school, went off to college, and he had to learn the hard way that you're not given extended time to get your grades up, I think we are doing a huge disservice for our students. Well, I did find one. Those kids will have to go to more colleges than JG.
Yeah.
So there was one there. Dan, from a superintendent here, I can't think of anything worse than the San Francisco proposal. If anything, we need to be holding our students to higher standards as they are capable and have shown they are capable. Lowering the standards is not beneficial to our students and the development, I guess I should say. It drives my wife and I crazy how homework can be turned in late without penalty and tests can be retaken multiple times again without penalty. Our high schoolers put such little care into studying to get the A on the first and only attempt. I had students who would not do work I provided in class because they knew it didn't count towards their final grades. And look, I have come to be a lot less draconian about the idea of, I wouldn't say you want kids to have multiple test opportunities if they blow it the first time, but I have come to accept that there may be occasions where you do allow a mulligan every once in a while, especially if the goal is learning the material and you do a better job of learning the material the second time around for whatever reason. I don't necessarily think that's the worst idea ever. I don't know what your view is on that.
No, I don't. I don't think that's a bad idea.
There's some middle ground there. I don't think it can be, well, you can just keep taking it until you pass it. I mean, then at that point you feel like you sort of lost the thread a little bit, I would think. Grades should reflect content mastery. The 100-point scale has many problems, most of which is the lines between grades are subjective. Is 90% qualitatively different than 89%? Probably not. But the impact on student grades and GPA is significant. Yeah, but you're between 89 and 90, but that's not that's not exactly what is being offered here in this situation. I don't disagree with the point that James is making, but I'm not sure he's really reacting to the degree of, what's the word here? Liberalization that apparently was being proposed in San Francisco, and that, according to some of our texters, is maybe a little bit in one form or another more widespread already than we might think. Speaking of Sedano, writes Larry Mondello guy, it was great listening to him on the show on Monday. Really interesting to get to hear what it's like to be a great sideline reporter. It's a perspective I don't remember hearing on Bumper to Bumper before. Man, that's...
When you say Mandela guy, it gives me time to get to the last page. You know it's coming. That's good. That's a good cheap shot. Truth cannot be controversial.
No, I guess that's... what else we have here? A couple more. That's not a poem that I'm going to read, I don't think, on air. Bring back Cat. Randall just sat. Luka is fat. Wolves and South.
Not the Luka I saw 2 days ago at Real Madrid's stadium. He's leaned out.
Is he going to lose all his strength?
No, he's going to look like he didn't.
Does he look like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander now? That's too wispy.
It worked for him in like 2018.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned those highlights you saw that I didn't even remember.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah. This is from Ryan in Minneapolis. Hasn't OKC proven the model of athletic bigs that can play good offense and decent defensively? Why not keep Nas and Julius and offload Rudy for payroll and picks? Recognize he might have trade restrictions, but he provides no offense, and I question whether Rudy is necessary to get through the first two rounds. That's the name that's going to come up. But I have no sense of any meaningful Rudy trade value at this point at his price. And then it's the old, was he actually more valuable to you than he is for that reason anybody else? Notwithstanding those frustrations that we all have regarding, how limited he is offensively, given that by every eye test and analytic, they are still loads better defensively, tend to be loads better defensively, when he's on the court than when he's off the court.
And I would say they've already answered their plans for the Rudy question with how they redid his contract, I think right before the season, to give him a couple extra years and lower his average annual salary. Yeah, I think they ended up giving him like 2 more years off, because I think it was 4 years left. So after this year, it would have been 1 year left, but I think they kicked on a couple of more years, gave him some extra money on the back end, but the number was a little bit more manageable. So there's no question that Rudy's, in my opinion, a part of their long-term vision.
In the Edina School District, they break down grading into 2 categories: summative, testing and major projects, and formative, typically homework related. Summative is 90% of the grade. So guess how often my kids actually turn in their daily assignments, as it has little impact on their final grade. Now, again, there may be education experts would say that in terms of evaluation, that's the direction that many school systems are going in terms of that breakdown, summative and formative. And I'm not here to say that doing homework is the key to everything, but I mean, I feel sad because I think that is part of how you master whatever you're covering, and also how you develop work habits certainly from an educational standpoint that might serve you as well later. So I don't know what the answer is there, but and there's a lot of folks who study this thing every day, but that's a little bit sad to me that there's so little emphasis on that work being done, because then it's almost like, well, if that's your percentage, why bother assigning it? In a sense, right? If that's the percentage breakdown, 90-10,
right?
Then what?
Well, I think they assign it so that the people that are able to do it and get it done and have the help or have the structure to do it at home can do it, but they're not making it a requirement for those that don't. I think that's probably why. But
realistically, what are the chances that they're going to be able to do well on the other part of it? Isn't it all part of the preparation for mastering the material that allows you to do well in the summative way as well? Because the summative way, that's in a
perfect world,
that's my concern here. The irony of the equity grading plan is it's probably only going to create more a larger equity gap. That's exactly it. It's almost like just pass them on. Let's get them going. We just got to keep them going. We got to then we can put out a chart saying that our failure numbers are down from what they'd been the previous 5 years. And as I said, even if you think there are rational reasons for some of these changes, you have to be prepared to understand that what it's going to do is drive more families out of the system. And that's what we're all, I think, as somebody who grew up in the public school system and who believes in the importance of it, all that does, again, I think, is weaken that system. It further compromises that system, and because the individuals from families who have the money to go elsewhere to private schools, that's all they're going to do. And that's going to lessen enrollment. That's going to harm everybody. If you want to buy the old lift all boats thing, that's going to have the absolute opposite effect. Other than, like I said, I think a lot of times it's, how can we feel better about ourselves? This is how we're going to feel better about ourselves, is put in place a system that really doesn't serve. It may serve the interest of a few students, but not the majority of students, not the most students. And the challenging students, where there are issues at home, all those challenges are real, obviously, but it's difficult for me to believe. This, almost like I said, looks like we're overwhelmed by it. It's beyond us. So let's just make everything a D or a C, and a B can become an A, and people can feel better about themselves, even if they don't necessarily have mastery of whatever the subject might be. I had one more to get to. Well, I'll tell you what, let's break. We'll stay on schedule because we got Jonny Athletic at the bottom of the hour. Here's one more. Shea is a flopper. Jaden is a stopper. Luca eats Whoppers. Wolves and
It's time to make sports betting in Minnesota legal. It's a win-win-win. A win for consumers, a win for youth sports, a win for charities. Consumers would have more protection against offshore unregulated websites. Revenue would stay in Minnesota and be invested in youth sports and provide a tax cut for charities. Legalizing sports betting has bipartisan support as well as support from Minnesota's tribes and horse tracks. Let your legislators know the time for waiting is over and join 39 other states in protecting consumers, ensuring age verification, and benefiting Minnesota. Visit sportsbettingalliance.org to learn more. Prepared and paid for by the Sports Betting Alliance.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hi, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. On this week's episode of Math and Magic, I'm sitting down with the one and only Bobby Bones. We're exploring the power of audio.
The word on the street then was, he's too country for pop. But then once I got to country, it was he's too pop for country. So I kind of never really had a place to fit in, but that's exactly how and why I fit. I just embraced that. Like, yeah, I don't fit into one specific hole. I think that is what endeared me to listeners. That's why I'm here now, because I talk to people that grew up like me, have sensibilities like me, and have loyalties like me.
Listen to Math and Magic, stories from the frontiers of marketing on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Join us at Shields in Eden Prairie this Saturday from noon to 3 for TB1 Funds Putt for Patience, mini golf, food trucks, bounce houses, prizes, and more. Plus, meet and greets with our own Paul Allen, Justin Gard, Marnie Geldner, and Muss, K102. Tickets start at just $5 for kids. Visit tb1fund.org for details.
Johnny with the very latest from Western Conference Finals. He is, of course, back in Oklahoma City for tonight's Game 5. No tomorrow for the Wolves. They must win to extend the series to 6 games back here. That would be, of course, on Friday night. He joins at 4:30. Kessler will join at 5:30. The mantra we have liked to go by here, sometimes we succeed, I'm sure sometimes we fall short, is, follow the story, wherever the story may go. And in the internet age, in the viral age in which we live, in the instant communication time in which we live, there are dangers and challenges when it comes to following the story. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, occasionally a story jumps up, gets major notoriety, gets significant attention, and we're often capable of losing our minds because the story seems very serious and seems very concerning, right? And then occasionally what we find out sometime later, sometimes a day later, sometimes a week later, sometimes a month later, we find out, well, maybe there's not as much there as we thought. Does that part of the story get its proper due and attention?
Rarely.
A story that on the front end causes polarizing debates, minute-by-minute discussions on all the national sports platforms or the platforms where occasionally sports and real life merge. All the lectures that we hear about regarding if the allegations are accurate, what they might mean. And the answer is rarely. And it's happened once again. In fact, I hadn't even seen this. I don't know if you had. But you'll recall that the WNBA had announced that it was doing a significant investigation into a report of racist fan behavior at an Indiana-Chicago game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. That was in Indianapolis earlier this month. right? I think we talked about it.
It was that Sunday afternoon game, right?
That's it. That's exactly right. Here is the statement from the league, which was, I think, released yesterday, if I'm not mistaken.
It was.
We have investigated the report of racist fan behavior in the vicinity of the court during the May 17, 2025 Sky at Indiana Fever game. Based on information gathered to date, including from relevant fans, team, and arena staff, as well as audio and video review of the game, we have not substantiated it. WNBA is committed to fostering a safe and inclusive environment for everyone and will continue to be vigilant in enforcing our fan code of conduct, unquote. The WNBA had been investigating what it termed as hateful fan comments that were alleged to have occurred after Caitlin Clark fouled Angel Reese in the third quarter of the team's season opener. Reese objected to the foul, later upgraded to a flagrant 1. Both Reese and Indiana's Aaliyah Boston were assessed technicals. After Reese went to confront Clark, Boston stepped in to keep the players separated. At the time, both of them downplayed the incident. Basketball play, Reese said, refs got it right, move on. Neither team mentioned nor alluded to any fan remarks in the postgame news conference after Indiana's 93-58 victory. It became a topic, though, on social media, and WNBA rightly announced that it would indeed investigate. Reese brushed aside questions about the investigation before Tuesday night's game against the Phoenix Mercury, saying she was focused on the game today and more concerned about helping the Sky earn their first win of the season after an 0-3 start. See, that's what's wrong with this story. The allegations are serious. And by the way, just because they couldn't substantiate them doesn't mean they didn't happen. I think most reasonable people understand that. However, it should be covered in a significant way, given what everybody was calling for is you got a lot of ways and opportunities to talk to a lot of people, check a lot of video sources, a lot of audio sources, a lot of phones, the whole bit, right? Which apparently they did. So if you're on the front end demanding an investigation, you can't just let it go like, ho-hum, yawn, nothing to see here, if the report and with a league that clearly has its antenna up about stories like this says we can't find it. Now, again, doesn't mean it didn't happen. But it might mean that in this case it didn't to the degree that was alleged. That doesn't mean there aren't racist comments out there. Doesn't mean there are not racist letters that are sent. But there's suddenly no interest in this story now. Because so much time had been spent on pontificating on the assumption that it had to be accurate, that it had to be true, that it had to have happened. And that, to me, is where we all lose credibility in that, again, even if nothing happened there, doesn't mean racism doesn't exist. But it should matter what was revealed in this investigation. And if nothing isn't revealed in this investigation, it should be a story that is covered extensively. But we're in all too much of a hurry. So it's all going to be a lecture on the front end. We may find out in 2 days. I just did the same thing on this, like a lot of people today nationally that I respect, on the San Francisco story. Maybe we'll find out actually, well, you know what, some of that stuff they were really not going to go through with, etc. So we're all guilty of it to a degree. But what I like to think we would do is, if in a week we find out there's more information on that story, we will attempt to get back to it. But in this case, it couldn't have been, it was literally on a lot of the national talk shows, the number one story. It was huge, in part because it involves Clark and Reese, and in part because it's a very serious charge. And obviously no athletes, we talked about this how many times when it came up with Draymond Green, should have to deal with this nonsense. I was going to say, especially in 2025, shouldn't even matter what year it is. But again, just because you damn well know if the report had confirmed it, we would have had another whole round of, you see, this is serious. We now have proof of it. This is very dangerous, and rightly so. But we shouldn't just drop it when it's not as convenient or the result didn't quite match up all of the lecturing that was done on the front end that, in effect, let's be honest, pretty much impugned the entire Indiana Fever fan base, right? I mean, that was pretty much the intent of it. And if you're Reese, this is what's hilarious to me. Clark is always on double secret. People are evaluating things she says every minute, including how she had to call this out, whether she even knew whether it happened or not. That was her responsibility. Shouldn't Angel Reese have a little responsibility and say, well, I certainly appreciate the effort that was made there. I heard what I thought I heard, whatever the case may be, but the investigation is out, and for me to say I'm not interested. Now I've got to prepare for a game when somebody asks about that. It's just so fascinating. For Clark, the evaluation, did she say the right thing in this situation, is constant. It's forever. Angel Reese, she's going to blow it off. No big deal. Even though on the front end, it was a seriously covered story because it pertains to a very significant issue. Anything else on that you want to add to?
Well, just on the timing of the announcement, they dropped it like an hour before Game 4 of the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
I don't think that was accidental either.
Yeah, you're probably right.
I think just the timing of we're going to get this statement out and then we're going to move on from it. The Sky, I think, responded and said, we appreciate Indiana looking into it. And then
I saw that statement. You're right. Well. Yes.
So the team everybody's getting their statements out.
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah. But unless that quote's inaccurate for her, it was like, what I'm not going to worry about it. It's not my deal, even though it was your deal. All right, let's break for Jonny Athletic. Let's get the very latest steam out of Oklahoma City. 8 athletic writers asked to predict the outcome, the winner of game number 5, and all 8. By the way, before game 4, it was 4-4. 4 picked the Wolves to win game 4. 4 picked Oklahoma City. Now, with the Wolves on the ropes, it's 8 for 8, Okie City. Does Johnny think the Wolves have one more run in them? We'll find out when we check in with.
It's time to make sports betting in Minnesota legal. It's a win-win-win. A win for consumers, a win for youth sports, a win for charities. Consumers would have more protection against offshore unregulated websites. Revenue would stay in Minnesota and be invested in youth sports and provide a tax cut for charities. Legalizing sports betting has bipartisan support as well as support from Minnesota's tribes and horse tracks. Let your legislators know the time for waiting is over and join 39 other states in protecting consumers, ensuring age verification, and benefiting Minnesota. Visit sportsbettingalliance.org to learn more. Prepared and paid for by the Sports Betting Alliance.
Hi, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. On this week's episode of Math and Magic, I'm sitting down with the one and only Bobby Bones. We're exploring the power of audio.
The word on the street then was he's too country for pop. But then once I got to country, it was he's too pop for country. So I kind of never really had a place to fit in, but that's exactly how and why I fit. I just embraced that. Like, yeah, I don't fit into one specific hole. I think that is what endeared me to listeners. That's why I'm here now, because I talk to people that grew up like me, have sensibilities like me, and have loyalties like me.
Listen to Math and Magic, stories from the frontiers of marketing on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Fan.
It's time for Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic, and he's on the Dan Marrero right now.
Brought to you by RBC Wealth Management. Let's start with the most obvious, overarching question. Johnny, is this the last Jonny Athletic bumper-to-bumper appearance during the Wolves 2025 playoff run?
Yeah, I was just telling Guardsy, Dan, I just feel like they can win tonight and get back for 6. It is a team. I asked Rudy about it this morning, and he said we're always best when we're in survival mode. And he said, I wish we were in survival mode more often, but that's where we are right now. And so I guess I would be only mildly surprised if they lost tonight. Certainly not shocked to be coming back for game 6. They always just seem to summon something, and we'll see if they can pull it out tonight.
Somebody is telling me, and I didn't hear him this morning, but your guy, Scalabrini, also picked the Wolves to win this game. I don't think he necessarily picked them to win. When the series began, he actually did pick them to win the series. Then he kind of turned, but he does have them winning tonight. I am fairly pessimistic, not because they can't, but I think I'll stand by what I said when we talked in the cage. I think game 4 was a game they had to get. I think we can't forget that they're playing a pretty resolved team, not an unbeatable team by any means, but a pretty resolved team that's coming back home after finding a way, somehow, some way, to win Game 4. So let's start with what Gargi and I talked about early and didn't spend as much time on yesterday as several other angles. It's the Julius Randle angle. And I'm very curious to get your view. We laid out, you know the numbers obviously better than me, and the contrast between the two games in which he at least scored effectively, and the two dreadful games, 2 and 4, where he was a combined 3 for 18 from the field, 0 for 6 from 3, 9 turnovers, 11 points. Above and beyond that, you certainly are aware in 2025 that people break down video not simply for performance, but for body language. And there certainly appeared to me to be a number of moments, especially in the second half, where it looked like Julius Randle was about as close to being checked out as a player possibly could be in a game where, basically their season is at stake. So what did you see? How concerning should that be? And I know it sounds a little crazy given how significant his contribution had been through the first 2 series, and even one could say in the first half of the first game, and then obviously the huge performance in Game 3. How concerning do you think it is to the team long term, looking at him and figuring him out, and how concerning should it be?
Well, I mean, I think it should be concerning, Dan, because, I mean, we don't even have to do the body language doctor thing and, kind of try and read between the lines. We can just listen to what Julius Randle said himself. And I asked him after the game what happened, after Game 4, and he just said, I think it was like Game 2, and I was just out there spectating. And I think that's concerning, Dan, for a player who has a history of questionable kind of motivation, or certainly moodiness that kind of comes in and out. He had been so good and so consistent in all of these playoffs and for the last 21 games after coming back from injury, all of those things. And we really hadn't seen that. And so you wondered if he was just really settling in to this new role as a supporting player, but still a high-end one, and feeling very comfortable, and that bringing out the best of him. But really now, in 2 just critical moments here on the biggest stage, he has been very passive, and he has admitted to doing so. And so I do think that there is a lot riding for him on Game 5, if there is a Game 6, however this goes. No matter what happens in terms of team result, Julius Randle has to be effective and at least engaged on both ends, and aggressive, and all of the things that were making him such a great story in the first 2 series of these playoffs. If he doesn't, if it's another one of those ugly, quiet, passive games, I do think it should make the Timberwolves think a little bit more about what the long-term future of Julius Randle in Minnesota looks like. I think there's a lot riding on this for him going into tonight, and if this series is extended. Yeah,
I really do too. And I'm assuming, again, you and I have talked about this. You've written about it extensively. There is no bigger Randle fan in this organization than Finch. That's been proven time and time again. He obviously worked with him in New Orleans. They had a very good relationship there. He has doubled down on him, and yet, not doubled down on him to the extent that he's going to just play him regardless, right? There have been 2 significant stretches in which he has not played. So, and I assume this is another one of those games where feelings are irrelevant. Finch's only responsibility has to be whoever's got it going, right? Whoever has it going will play in this game, especially if a particular group, if the Wolves are down, gets them back in it, or it's the group that actually has them ahead. I got to believe all bets are off tonight in terms of even, like I said, who's in when, any sort of whatever combinations are used, it's all going to be about results tonight, I would assume.
Yeah, 100%. And I think Finch has done a good job of building up trust and relationships with all of these guys, but especially Julius Randle. And I think that has allowed him to sit him down when he needs to, and then still not have that become an existential crisis for Randall and for the organization. But tonight is one of those nights, and we've seen Finch do it with Julius Randle. We've seen him do it with Rudy Gobert. We can go backward and see him do it with D'Angelo Russell in playoffs and things like that. There are no sacred cows tonight. This is you have to bring everything you have, and if not, we'll find someone else who does kind of a game. Because one thing about Oklahoma City, whether or not they're hitting all their shots, whether or not things are going perfectly for them on the court, what we do know about them is they are going to bring the requisite effort and the consistency of execution that is been unreliable for these Timberwolves. I do think that the Wolves have a ceiling as high as OKC, in individual moments. But what has separated OKC is just how much more consistent they are and how much more machine-like they have been in what they're doing and their ability to stay locked in and stay focused. And the Wolves have not shown that same kind of discipline and that same kind of reliability. And so I think that Finch has to read the game, read it early, and be very aggressive in making changes or switches if things are not working, because the cliche goes, there's no tomorrow. You go down with these guys and you're still going to be going down. So all hands on deck tonight for sure.
Let me try a coaching question on you. So again, and I grant everything does get magnified and oversimplified, right? It's almost like the burden. It's the yin and the yang of getting as far as any team does when they get to the Final Four. It's you're going to examine stuff that, well, if they'd already been eliminated, you're not even going to be talking about, right? And some of it can get a little crazy and a little bit over the top. But if you go back to Game 4, for example, there were once again stretches where I'm looking and I'm thinking, the system that OKC uses offensively does seem to give their big two and others, but starting with their big two, and even Holmgren to a degree, because he was very good in Game 4, opportunities, like good scoring opportunities. And then I sometimes look at the Wolves and I think of, okay, I'm mad at Anthony Edwards, only took 2 shots in the first half, slow to the trigger, and then maybe the second half made the right basketball plays. But for him, and even for Randall for a degree, it looks hard. It looks like you don't see quite as much, you don't see the same openings. So should we be factoring in, and some of this comes onto the players, but should some of it be on the coaching? I mean, is there something about the OKC system that plays better to the strengths of their team? And is it still a fair question to ask whether sometimes if things are coming this hard in the first half of a game where Edwards only takes 2 shots, some of it may be on him, but some of it also might be that this system is not, at the moment of truth, now that we're down to really good teams that you're playing, giving these players the best opportunity to flourish. What do you think?
Yeah, I wrote about this at the start of the series. It kind of gets to the heart of who Chris Finch is as a coach and what he is trying to accomplish in the greater scheme with these Timberwolves. And I think part of it is that Chris Finch has a very high-minded view of what basketball should be and about what kind of basketball is going to be the most aesthetically pleasing, but also the most difficult to defend. And that is, in general, a preference for the free-flowing, instinctive, reactive type of offense that allows players to make reads on the fly and doesn't have them necessarily, going right. Point A to point B, make this pass. Now, Oklahoma City, first of all, let's say this. Oklahoma City is a smarter basketball team than the Timberwolves. I think one of the things that the Timberwolves consistently come up short in is basketball IQ and making the right decisions, making the right reads, those types of things. And so what Chris Finch is trying to do with Anthony Edwards, with Randall, with a lot of these young guys, with Jaden McDaniels. He's trying to get them to a place where their basketball IQ is big and is able to kind of react in the moment and read it and play that way. But you could make an argument that this specific team in this specific moment needs a little bit more guidance, needs a little bit more simplicity to it. And so I do think that has been one thing that I think for the greater good is probably the right thing for these Wolves. But for right now, it might be holding them back a little bit in terms of just what they need to get by today.
And let's follow up on Edwards a little bit. In terms of what you saw structurally from the OKC defense, was there a great disparity between the approach they took in 3 and the approach that they took in 4 that contributed to Edwards feeling like I got to go to this to be more the facilitator guy? Or is it other players not stepping up? What did you see, if anything, that was different regarding how OKC approached him, and how does that fit into what we might see tonight in Game 5?
Yeah, 2 things. One is they were certainly markedly just more intense and aggressive with what they were doing defensively. In Game 3, I do think they came in up 2-0 with 2 comfortable wins, and they just were not the desperate, hungry team that the Wolves were. And the Wolves played with a lot more force, a lot more energy, and the Thunder just seemed to be a little bit slower. And so that allowed Anthony Edwards to walk into 3-pointers that he didn't get in Game 4. That allowed him to turn the corner and get to the basket a little bit easier than he did in Game 4. And what you saw in 4 was a championship caliber team respond to the embarrassment that they felt in Game 3. And so they were very dogged, they were very determined, and they made it a lot harder for Edwards to get clear lanes, to get clean shots, and to really let it fly. The other part, though, that I really want to emphasize with fans who are watching and who have listened to the ESPN nonsense for most of the last 2 days is that one of the reasons is that Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, Jaden McDaniels were on fire. And so Ant adapted to the game because every time he drove into the lane, he made great passes out, and those guys knocked down open shots. I do believe, Dan, that if those 3 guys had struggled to make shots, especially early in the game, you would have seen Edwards look for more of his own shot and try to be more aggressive. And I do believe tonight he will try to be more aggressive early on with his shot again, but largely he was making the right play, finding the right guys, and it was working. They scored 126 points against a generational defense. That was good enough. Where he was not good enough was defensively. He was not locked in on that end of the court. He was giving up too many easy buckets, and that is what lost them the game, not as much the passivity on offense.
Well, I still think 2 shots is too few first half. I get it as the game evolved, but I felt I got to have a little bit more from him offensively, because I think, what are we down? Were we down at the half? Was it 8? 7 or 8 points? I think 8 points. And you say, well, that's not a huge amount, but then maybe it's tied. You know, we all know how tight this stuff is. It all works together. And so I still believe, as the game goes on, I get that. I still think early, even the head coach was saying first half he thought he was kind of lagging behind, and now part of it is what you were talking about defensively as well. But to me, I just don't think it's oversimplifying, because it's focusing so much on any one game where there are lots of different patterns and flow to the game, and that might lead to certain outcomes that aren't typical. But to me, as the head coach, I'm saying that 2 shots in an entire half, I can't live with that. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, 2 is certainly not enough, of course. I do think to look at what we have seen from Anthony Edwards in the last 2 conference finals, I honestly believe that there's 2 things that he really has to focus on in the summertime. And the first thing is finishing at the rim. For as athletic and as explosive as he is, he has really struggled in that area. And I do think that struggle makes him a little less inclined to go to the basket. If he doesn't think he's going to get the foul call and he's not finishing there at the rim, then you see him start to settle for more, and that's easier to defend and easier to take away. The second part about it is that I still think that he has some significant improvement to make from a conditioning standpoint. I do think that he is getting tired in some of these games, and we are seeing it with the defensive effort. We are probably seeing it with the reluctance to just become a guy who drives. I mean, Shea, for whatever you want to look at, his foul drawing and all that, he is relentless going to the basket. And he goes over and over and over again. I think he has the most drives in the league by a significant margin. And he does not look to wear down hardly at all ever. And I do think that Anthony Edwards does get tired easier in games. And it happened against Dallas last year. And I think it's happened at points in this series as well. And that's something that he's going to have to kind of evaluate on diet, on, training regimen, on all of those things, so that he does not get to a point when you're this deep in the season and the gas tank is running a little low.
So in effect, what you're telling me is the next time he goes to Chipotle, maybe he doesn't ask for a double order of chicken. He just goes for a single order of chicken in the bowl.
Fine. It's the rice.
Well, yeah, it's a combination of both.
Chicken is good.
But if you double the chicken, then you're also going to run into problems there. Because then they add more rice, and it's basically a mound of food. So just cut back a little bit on that. Maybe get some tips from Luka, who's already apparently lost 50 pounds, and you got something going, right?
Yeah, or I would even say Chipotle might be fine, but just stay away from the fried chicken, the pizza late, the real junk food that I think is a staple of his diet. And eating late at night while you're playing video games until 4 a.m. Maybe get a little bit better sleep. All of those things that a young person always does and has to learn about to kind of take that next step.
Sprite Zero too instead of Sprite.
Yeah, that might be
Sprite
helpful.
Zero is a good substitute, sugar free.
What was I going to ask?
Oh, man, I forgot.
You forgot, too? So I do remember this one. So tonight, for example, will you see any Timberwolves fans at all in the crowd? Because
I think that's what it was.
Maybe that was it. That, we see in most towns, you're not going to see huge numbers of fans, but you'll see little pockets. And we talked about how they seem to have these rules in place about zip codes in terms of getting tickets. But I'm trying to figure out if, some people who are really determined, they still they find a way in. So tonight, if you look to your right or your left, wherever you are, will you at all see even a dozen Wolves fans who happen to be sitting together in this huge crowd, or are they going to literally be almost non-existent tonight?
I will say, Dan, that in the first two games here, I saw some. I did see some. They weren't, endangered species out there, but certainly far fewer than I saw in LA, that I saw at Golden State, that I've seen at, they took over Denver last year, in the playoffs. Yep. And so I think there are some kind of shenanigans that the Thunder play with the tickets. It's also freaking impossible to get here. You got to take 6 flights and they all cost $1,000, and
it's an easy drive.
Real easy, real scenic drive
hours?
too. Yep. So I think that plays into it a little bit, but there's also this very much, Dan, and Guardsy will know, this feels like a college town.
Yeah.
I'm not looking down on Oklahoma City at all. it's actually kind of charming, but this feels like East Lansing, West Lafayette, a bunch of college towns that you go to that where there's one team here and they dominate everything, and there's a real fervor for the team among the fan base. And so I do think it's harder for outside fans just to penetrate that. But also, the flight prices and the flight options to get here are ridiculous. And so I don't necessarily blame it if some Wolves fans can't make this trip. they can the Denver or LA or San Francisco or things like that.
I'm sure their fans will appreciate you, the pat on the head that you just offered them up.
There's not very many towns we can be condescending towards.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why he's got to take advantage of it, right, Johnny?
I'm right there with him.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm right there with him.
Rubio. There was a Rubio question.
That's right.
What was the Rubio question, though, specifically?
If he's living in Spain. If
Is
he
that the
went
question?
back home, is he still dialed in on the Wolves?
Yeah, have you I mean, you had obviously a great relationship with Ricky. Yeah. Is he paying attention to the club right now?
He watches. I was texting with him last week just a little bit. We talk and text more than people know. But he's back in Spain with his family. Last year he kind of dabbled in coming back and playing in the Spanish league. And I don't know that he's made any decisions about whether he's fully done with his career yet, playing or not. But yeah, he's having a good time. He's raising his family and living his life over there. And he does keep an eye on it. He'll text and, ask about, how Ant's doing.
Yeah.
He really, I'll tell you this about Ricky. His last year here was Ant's rookie season, and it was the COVID year, and it was a miserable year and all that. And at the end of the season, I, kind of sat down with him as I always do. And one thing that he told me was, this is Ant's team, and they have to understand that this is Ant's team, and he is going to be that good to lead this franchise going forward. And so the faster that they kind of make that transition and build around him, the faster that they will kind of build into a winning franchise. So he saw the Ant stuff very, very early, even when Ant was good as a rookie, but not certainly overwhelming. And so, he's a big Ant guy, and he does keep a tabs on what's going on back here.
Did you happen to hear, we need to isolate it, it's so good, the KG trying to do the Ricky Rubio Spanish accent in the comment he was making the other day about modern locker rooms? God, it was good. It was just so good.
It was fantastic. It was a great story. KG's an unbelievable storyteller.
Yes.
But yeah, the mimicking of Ricky's voice and accent was top notch.
Well, I was shocked to hear, because the quote was, Ricky had sworn, too. He'd used the F word. Now, I don't even know if that's just KG being KG, or if Ricky is actually kind of ruined my image of my favorite Spaniard. With my Spanish background, it's like, oh, Ricky, say it ain't so. But, it's
no, he is prone to an F-bomb here and there. I will tell you that. Okay. It's always private. He doesn't do the Ant thing where it's all over the public airwaves.
Yes.
But yes, in private, he will let it fly. And I do think, to your point, I think it's more adorable than it is like, gets your attention or snaps you into place kind of a thing.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't mind a curse word now and then when he needs it.
I chuckle just thinking about it.
Yeah, man. Nobody wants to talk, man. Everybody's on their phones, man. We need to figure out the pick and roll. Like,
that's it. It's so good. It's my new favorite one. It's like, it's food in the mouth guy. It's that funny. I could hear it. I could listen to it day after day.
For all that he did, that's his legacy now with me.
That's true.
It was also very much like more to the Mexican side of Spanish than Ricky's Spanish side. So like it was sort of a combination of Ricky Rubio and Speedy Gonzalez.
That's true.
And so like it was high comedy.
Yeah. Well, that goes back. We talked. You and I have chuckled about this before. The time
fan group,
when the fan group started showing up wearing sombreros.
Yeah,
out of respect for Ricky, and Ricky had to say, "I love you, man," but that's really not a Spanish thing. That's okay, but
they learn their history at the San Francisco public schools, or they learn geography. They learn geography.
That's
there.
Probably true. Have fun tonight, man. Obviously, we will be watching. We'll be in touch. Thanks as always, Johnny.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you, John Krasinski. Great stuff as always. Brought to you by RBC Wealth Management. Before we prepare for Top 5 at 5 and you giving a tease, I have to respond to, I think it's 320 guy, who's offended that I picked Chipotle to do the fat joke. Now, if he thinks about it for a moment, and by the way, he's speaking to someone who probably eats more Chipotle than anybody he knows.
Yeah, okay? you are that for me.
But there was only one. I'm aware that, fried chicken places, fried food places are going to be bigger. He does Chipotle commercials. That's it. That's the only reason I said it. You don't have to be offended about Chipotle. And by the way, you can eat too much Chipotle. And the calories actually can add up.
They can.
If you get crazy with all the sauces.
Don't I know
and
it.
the cheese sauce
Don't
and
I
all
know
the other
it.
things. But
Block extra.
This isn't, you're thinking too hard. I picked that because he does Chipotle commercials. That's it. It's no big deal. I get it. Popeye's fried chicken, we'll all agree, as people who have enjoyed it, it's probably going to have a few more calories and on a steady basis not be quite as good for you. Top five? We'll go ahead.
But that doesn't stop me from going there every Friday after an upset.
That's the problem. Your problem is...
Yeah, it's bad.
There's one too close.
It's bad.
To Fox 9.
It's bad.
And so you can't help yourself.
It's very, very bad, Dan. It's
Top
very
five?
bad. Twins lose, Lynx win.
It's time to make sports betting in Minnesota legal. It's a win-win-win. A win for consumers, a win for youth sports, a win for charities. Consumers would have more protection against offshore unregulated websites. Revenue would stay in Minnesota and be invested in youth sports and provide a tax cut for charities. Legalizing sports betting has bipartisan support as well as support from Minnesota's tribes and horse tracks. Let your legislators know the time for waiting is over and join 39 other states in protecting consumers, ensuring age verification, and benefiting Minnesota. Visit sportsbettingalliance.org to learn more. Prepared and paid for by the Sports Betting Alliance.
Okay, have you heard about this? Last year, Degree changed the formula for their Cool Rush deodorant. Their fans rebelled and wanted the old scent back. And Degree listened. That doesn't happen often.
They admitted that they effed up and are bringing the original Cool Rush scent back. And it's exactly how you remember it. Cool, crisp, and fresh. There's a reason it's the #1 men's antiperspirant. And it's back in Walmart, Target, and other stores for under $4.
So try it and see what the fuss is about. Head to your local stores to try the OG Cool Rush for yourself.
Wasabi Technologies is purpose-built to free businesses from skyrocketing storage costs and unpredictable egress fees from those old and top-heavy legacy providers. You know, the big guys. Wasabi is the go-to provider for professional and collegiate sports teams around the world. From Wasabi's AI-enabled intelligent media storage, Wasabi Air, to the industry's only cloud storage service with triple protection against cyber criminals, Wasabi is driving innovation in data storage, all for up to 80% less than those other guys. Try them out for free at wasabi.com.
Hi, I'm Bob Pittman, Chairman and CEO of iHeartMedia. On this week's episode of Math and Magic, I'm sitting down with the one and only Bobby Bones. We're exploring the power of audio.
Yeah, I don't fit into one specific hole. I think that is what endeared me to listeners. That's why I'm here now, because I talk to people that grew up like me, have sensibilities like me, and have loyalties like me.
Listen to Math and Magic, stories from the frontiers of marketing on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcast.